everybody, it's Susie Singer-Carter, and I just wanted to let you know that we have a GoFundMe campaign for our documentary, No Country for Old People. I've been asking for a lot of money from people, but we really are at that point where we just need the finishing funds, and this project is so important. So I just wanted to let you know that we have a GoFundMe, and we're still connected to the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care. So all of your donations are completely 100% tax deductible, and you can go to the link here or there or there. So thank you, and also thank you for sharing it with your network. We appreciate it. It's for our most vulnerable and giving them a voice and to stop the suffering. So thank you.
When the world has got you down.
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hello, I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alls. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Donald. How you doing?
I'm, well, as you can tell, I sound a little different today, just slightly different.
Oh, my God. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everyone's doing well. Don and I got struck. We got side-struck. We got sucker punched by the norovirus.
Norovirus.
Yeah.
And that's why my voice is down here because of, well, let's say they call it the Technicolor yawn, or screaming into the porcelain microphone, let's say. My voice is virtually gone. Sorry for that visual, but...
Ew, gross.
I know, sorry.
I'll just say that I felt like I was reenacting Bridesmaids. That's all. I'll just tell you right now.
Oh my. Oh my.
That's all I'm going to tell you, because, oh my God, you guys, the norovirus is brutal. It's no joke. And I got it the day after my birthday, after my little ones came and visited me and brought me presents and left me with a bonus present of the norovirus.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you
oh
so
my
much.
Goodness.
Yeah. Anywho, we're over it, sort of. It's been a couple, like 5 days of yuck.
Of good time fun.
2 days of real yuck, but then 3 more days.
You just don't feel
like,
great after. Yeah.
You don't feel great.
So don't get it.
So
what we're saying is
don't get it. It's very contagious. Do not get
Yes.
it. Wash hands, and be careful of little ones, because it comes from daycares and preschools. Ugh. All right. Anyway,
Yay.
So Dawn, let's change
yes, Susan.
subject and go.
Let's,
and see, I'm speaking all millennial because, like I
Yeah.
said, let's change subject because
Subs.
we have a
I don't think
millennial.
that's a thing.
It is. It
Subs?
is. You're just old. Yeah,
I
you're just
know.
subs.
What do I
you
know?
You don't. Papu, which is grandpa. Papu is grandpa in Greek, and I said that because appropriately our guest who is coming up is Greek.
That's fantastic.
See how I did that? I played that all together. So
Yeah.
because
And she's wonderful.
My good
And
friend.
should should I tell everyone about her? Should I?
Well, I guess go. Why not? Jump on in.
Maria Kent Beers is the co-founder and co-host of the Remember Me podcast plus community. Maria's desire to share her mother's story and her experience as a caregiver led to the creation of her podcast that explores the world of brain health, Alzheimer's, and frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. Along with her co-host Rachel Martinez, Maria has become an important resource supporting a community of families and caregivers who are navigating this devastating and often misunderstood disease. She has served as a guest speaker at Alzheimer's and caregiving conferences around the world and continues to be a beacon of knowledge and guidance for others on the FTD journey.
And with that, let's welcome Maria Kent Beers. Hello, Maria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Hi, Maria. It's so nice to meet you. You're so adorable. And yeah, and if you're not watching, you should, because she's very sweet and like sunshine.
Thank you. Sunshine
You
in
are.
Boston. That's saying something.
Yeah, you bring the sunshine to Boston. That's
Yes.
good. That's good. So we're really happy to have you here, and it's interesting because your story, well, like most of our stories as caregivers, it's very similar to mine in even time wise, almost. As far as
Wow.
caring for our mothers and with different diseases, but yet very similar. Your mom with frontotemporal dementia, my mom with Alzheimer's, and you lost your mom in 2020, right?
Yes. End of
My
2020. Yes.
condolences. End of 2020.
Thank
I just
you.
lost my mom in July 22 last year.
Mm,
So,
so
and it's a
recent.
journey. It's a journey, right? Thank you. And you started a podcast in 2020, as did we, which is
Awesome.
amazing. Yeah. And I love that you took your experience and made it into a positive and made it into a giving, forward. And that's
Felt like I had to. Yeah. What else can you do?
it's the best, but it's the best thing. It's either that or you just go, I'm done, and you walk away.
Yep. Hmm.
And then what good is
Exactly.
that? Yeah,
And then you kind of live in that. You can live in that grief, because you don't talk about it. You kind of just bury it, and that's not good.
Absolutely. I feel like there's two paths, and I decided to channel some creativity and healing into this project, and it's really helped me a ton and
that's
others. Thank
beautiful.
God.
Well, so your mother is Mamalia. Is that how I pronounce your name?
No.
It's Amalia, but don't worry, nobody
Amalia.
ever knows how to say it. It's a very Greek, old school, traditional Greek name. And my mom actually always used to tell me, don't ever name any of your kids Amalia because nobody can say that name.
And I'm proof positive. There you go. I mean,
Yes.
it's much. Amalia is much better. God bless your mom if she's listening. Amalia is beautiful. I just bastardized it. That's all. Well, I do know how to say grandma in Greek. Yaya.
Oh, yeah. Yaya. You got it.
Yaya.
Yaya. I just lost my Yaya actually a couple months ago, but she was 94
Oh,
and a whippersnapper. So,
I
yes.
love it. Oh, I love it. My friends are Greek, and I love my friend's parents. But all the kids call them Yaya and Papu. So,
Yes, I love
right?
that.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
it too. I love it too. Well, just tell me a little bit about, or a lot, whatever you want to share with us, about your journey, because you're young and your mom was young, and just give us how did this all start for you? You in your bio, it talks about you loving to create and be creative and edit, and so where were you when your mom was diagnosed with FTD in your life?
It feels like a million years ago, but it wasn't that long ago. I had just gotten married. It was 2015, and I was just kind of in that fun, like we were living in Boston, down in the city, and just, that newlywed life and newlywed bliss. And we were all scratching our heads, me and my siblings, my husband, my dad, like something's not quite right with my mom. She was the glue of our family. She was bubbly. You were saying your mom was funny. My mom was so funny, and just such a light. And she was becoming very withdrawn and alarmingly was like losing her words. She was replacing words with the wrong word. She called everything thing, and she was 52 years old. So we're like, what is happening?
Goodness.
So my youngest sister, who's 10 years younger than me, was going off to college, and my mom had four kids, and she was a stay-at-home mom for 30 years. So we're like, maybe she's having a hard time letting the kids, all move on and she's going to be an empty nester. Like we just kept trying to explain it away. We thought, I know this is so common, is she depressed? Like all the things you go through to say what's happening to my person. And the language really tipped doctors off. They're like, something's really not right here. And we have the privilege of living in Boston, which is a major medical community. And pretty quickly, we got the diagnosis of frontotemporal dementia, which we had no idea what that was.
Right.
I mean, I knew I had this feeling that whatever my mom had, it wasn't going to get better. But I never thought dementia. I didn't know you could get dementia at age 50. It was just like, it was like one day my life was one way, and then like the next day my world was like completely upside down. Like, what does this mean? And yeah, it was such a whirlwind of like, okay, like, what does this mean for our family? What's a life like? What even is this? Never heard of this before.
Right.
And so, yeah, I could go on and on and on. So please interrupt me if you need to.
No, but it's really interesting for me because, yeah, I think most of us, especially if we're close-knit family and like I know my mom so well, and I started seeing the signs way early in my mom when she was like in her late 60s. And then all my family kept, dismissing it. It's everyone forgets, everyone gets confused, But I saw changes in her personality, and she was getting frustrated, and I could see that. And like, in the film that we made, we do a scene about my mom. There's a scene where she gets very indignant about it, and just outrage and sense like, I'm not sick, you're sick. I'm fine. There's a denial about it, and rightly so, because it's frightening, right? So, we get frightened. I get frightened if I forget a word. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
right?
It's happening to me now. Yes,
Exactly.
we talk about that so much in our little podcast FTD community. Is like, oh no, is it coming for me too? It's just, it's
scary.
It's a world I never thought I'd be entered into, especially at this age. It just, it was honestly so traumatic. Like,
so traumatic. Do you mind me asking your age? And you don't have to tell me if you don't want to.
Oh my God, you can ask me anything. I'm like, wow, how old am I? I'm 35.
Okay, so you're 35, and there you are in the middle. You are the epitome of, I don't know if you have children, but
I do now, yes.
You do now. So you are, exactly the definition of a sandwich generation. I was on the tail end of it because my daughter, I have two daughters, but my one daughter was in college and my other one was 16 when I had my mom move in with me. So it was like, and I was going through a divorce. So it was like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of my life. And it's like, how is this happening? And I, like you, knew nothing about any kind of dementia at all. I mean, as far as I was as dumb as it gets. I was like, oh, senility. That's what I thought dementia was.
Right.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know the nuances. I didn't know anything about it.
And how would you? Nobody talks about it.
Who wants to? Nobody wants to talk.
Yeah, why would you?
Right.
Yeah.
How you doing? I found this really great top over at Free People. And how's about dementia? Let's talk about dementia. Right?
Yeah.
I love that. I need that.
But it's different in many ways than Alzheimer's. There are some similarities, I guess.
Yeah.
Is memory part of the symptoms of the loss of memory, or is it more the language skills and it manifests in other ways?
So typically, memory is not impacted. Sometimes in the late stages it is, but your frontal lobe primarily deals with language, personality, judgment, depending. We've interviewed a lot of like doctors now and asked them these questions, like, why is it that some people present as like having odd behaviors and some people like my mom present with language problems? And they say that like depending on which part of your frontal lobe is impacted is kind of where the symptoms will start, and then a lot of times they just spread and you kind of get the whole gamut. We also have a lot of people in our community who donate their loved one's brain, and a lot of times they see Alzheimer's webs sometimes in people that live with the disease for a long time, but no, typically the memory is not impacted. So it's a little bit of a different beast.
Can you explain like what exactly causes it, if they know, or how is it discovered? Because how is it diagnosed? And I'm going to say this because when I recently I suffer from migraines, and I'm starting to, and I've got tinnitus as well, all of a sudden out of nowhere, which is like this ringing in your ear. And so I've never had an MRI in my brain, but I did, and I was really afraid because my mom had Alzheimer's, and I thought, oh, they're going to find something weird in me, and da 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 da. And my doctor was saying, well, let's just make sure that you don't have any what is it? Like your arteries or your smaller arteries. What could have been like, the worst case scenario could be like the temporal dementia, because it affects your arteries. And anyway, I'm fine. There's like nothing remarkable. My brain is fine. Thank God. But I started reading into it and thinking, wow, there's so many things that can create that. Like my ex-husband had a frontal brain injury. He fell off a double-decker bus in Britain. And I know that he manifested a lot of the same issues that people with FTD have, in terms of personality, in terms of his language. He had a lot of difficulty, you couldn't interrupt him speaking, or he'd lose his train because he'd lose his words and things like that. So,
yeah, to answer your question about what causes it, so there is a small, I don't know how to quantify it because the statistics change all the time, but there is a population of people living with this disease that have it genetically inherited. The FTD, scientists and experts have identified, I believe it's 4 genetic mutations now. So there is definitely a genetic component to this disease, but that's not the majority of cases. The majority of cases is what they call multifactorial, and they don't really know yet. It could be a variety of factors. We did do genetic testing for my mom, and we talk a lot about this stuff on our podcast just to try and destigmatize it a little bit. We did genetic testing, and my mom did not have like a known genetic cause. So we don't know. We don't know why this
is it
horrible
strokes?
thing happened.
Is it high blood? Is it high blood pressure? Is it diet? Is it like
they're
cholesterol?
trying to find out.
They don't know.
They don't know. There is a lot of, I'm sure you guys see like all of this information coming out about, diet and brain health, and certainly they're saying, those things are important for, if you don't have a known genetic cause, for helping prevent, types of dementia, but no, they don't know. And so a lot of what our podcast is really trying to like get the word out that this even exists, so we can get people into research, we can get testing, we can get doctors studying it. But the good news is that the doctors that are focused on FTD are making such incredible strides right now that the government keeps funding FTD research. So, and especially with Bruce Willis's diagnosis coming out this year,
that helps.
I think it does. And so, we don't know. And, even when they, have people give the incredible donation of their loved one's brain or donate their time to science, a lot of the data they're collecting, they don't know what it means yet. So that's kind of part of our fight is like, how do we figure out what's going on here and how do we stop it?
Okay, can I ask you this? And you can, I mean, clearly you're telling me that they
You can
don't
ask
really
me
know.
anything.
Thank you. Because they can, so for instance, in Alzheimer's, they can't really diagnose it until someone's passed away. So, and
Right.
that's the dilemma there. But with FTD, they can diagnose it, and if that's true, what are they looking for? What do they see besides the
So
manifestations physically?
So they can't, I'll say they can't 100% diagnose FTD uh, until the autopsy, except if you have one of these known genetic mutations, which they can test for through blood test, or through like a spinal tap, and through, I think like you can even do those like swab kits now. So if you have a mutation, you can confirm that, in which with each mutation, you know what the percentage chances that you will develop the disease in your lifetime. But no, it's similar to Alzheimer's in that you can't really diagnose until autopsy. But some of the things that a doctor would look for to help them make the diagnosis would be, I mean, there's not a lot seen on a scan on an MRI, but you will see some atrophy in the frontal lobe, like you know how your brain tissue is like really tight together when you're super healthy, and then it starts to have like pockets. I think that's one thing. But when my mom went for her MRI, the only reason they could see, or maybe it's a PET scan, don't quote me, I'm not a doctor, but when they looked at her scans, the only way they saw the atrophy was really because my mom had had a scan like many, many years ago for something that they're saying is unrelated. And they could see the change, but it wasn't like a remarkable difference on the scan. So what they're looking for is someone like a typical story we hear on our podcast is someone under the age of 60 who, you know, typically has like a high level of education, but they're no longer able to form their words, or they're having drastic changes in their personality and their judgment. It's really like they're not behaving the way they did before. And so a lot of times that's why people many times end up at a psychiatrist, therapist, you know, some sort of a psychiatric doctor, because a lot of the initial signs are like apathy. You know, like my mom used to text me 100 times a day, and then I was like, Mom, you gonna text me? So it's subtle changes, but when you bring them to the doctor and you're like, you know, they're a professor and they're no longer grading their papers or showing up on time, and they're not able to teach the curriculum they taught for 30 years, you know, you really have to be a detective for this disease. You really
Wow.
have to list it all out.
And
It's
are they aware of it? Yeah. Are they aware of it at the time? I mean, I'm sure they're aware of it, but like with Alzheimer's, you know, there's a memory thing. So they do or say something and then they have no clue they did or said what they did. It's got to be very different with this because
Yeah,
there is no memory issue.
some people are, but then there's also this thing called, and I always butcher it. It's like anastagnasia, and that is something that many people with FTD have, where they have no awareness that there's anything wrong with them. In my mom's case, I think she knew, and how terrifying, right? To be like,
Yes.
something's wrong, and I can't even communicate that it's wrong. We did find journals that my mom had been writing in long before her diagnosis, writing like, something's not right, research this, research that. It's it's a really
Yeah.
heartbreaking part of it, you know, of like they're just trapped in this
Yes.
horrible situation, you know, and they are changing.
I feel the same way I used to. I feel that feeling that you just said so deeply, because I also found some journals of my mom's in her 60s, and she was like, I need to write this fast because I'll forget. Oh, my memory's getting so bad. Just thinking she was aging, right? And so when the day, well, the year that she lived with me was her hardest year because she was aware, and so she was fighting it. And I was almost relieved as it progressed, because I crossed her over the bridge, and she into acceptance, and then she was at peace with it. You know, it
That's
became her
beautiful
new
that you
normal.
helped her.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I
Did
still,
did that ever happen with your mother? To where there ever a point where, I mean, could you talk to her about it, or was it just kind of like, there's
it,
really, we can't discuss this, and it is what it is?
it really was like, it felt like as soon as we had a confirmed diagnosis, like she couldn't communicate anymore. Like it was so fast. And she was diagnosed in the fall of 2016. Um, or sorry, yeah, the fall of 2016. And then by the time the following fall, I was pregnant with my son Liam, with my first child. And when I went and told her, she couldn't even say
Wrap her head around
congratulations.
it.
Like she couldn't. She would, you know what she said? She said Wegmans, because she loved going to Wegmans, and she always wanted us to take her to Wegmans. And she would perseverate on the few words she had left. And so I was like, Mom, like I'm pregnant. And she was like, Wegmans? And I'm like, this is
Oh.
not the moment I
Answer you were
always
looking for. Yeah.
dreamed of. And by the
Yeah.
time my son was born 9 months later, I mean, she could hardly speak at all. Yeah. So we never got to have those
Mm.
conversations. And I do remember when she was first diagnosed, just to add more to the terribleness, my mom had the dual diagnosis of FTD and ALS. So, which is
Oh
common
boy.
in FTD. Yeah. So, I remember she was aware enough when the doctors were telling her, you also have ALS. And I remember her saying to me,
Oh.
I'm going to live a long time. I can walk really well. My legs are strong. My arms are strong. And she was spending so much of her time just reassuring us kids, I'm fine. Like, I'm going to be okay. When we all knew that wasn't, you know, that wasn't the case. But she was just such a mom. Like, she didn't want anyone to worry, you know, but
Right. Right.
yeah, it was such a crazy time. Yeah.
She ended up passing at a very young age with Alzheimer's. It eventually just, it just everything deteriorates physically. And is that the same with FTD?
I feel like this is my answer for a lot of things. It depends. There's so many different presentations. So my co-host Rachel, her dad lived with the disease for 12 years. And it was a very slow progression. And in the end, and we talk about all this on the podcast, we're open books. In the end, he, was wheelchair bound, and he started having some issues swallowing, and ultimately he had
Mm.
aspirated, and that was kind of his decline. Whereas my mom was, diagnosed to passing was 4 years, and she had the ALS component, and ultimately the ALS really took over. She
Right.
struggled to breathe, to walk, to like her muscles just gave out. And that is
Oh.
common in FTD patients, that can happen. But there are some people who live with the disease for 20 years, and they're ambulatory. And ultimately,
Mm.
we actually asked on our podcast if people are comfortable sharing like the end, just because we want to like destigmatize it, and I don't know, almost have a roadmap for people, like it could look like this.
Yeah.
And a
That's
lot of
why I was
times
asking.
it's
Yeah.
ish yeah, it's a lot of times it's issues with swallowing, um, and just, yeah, it's kind of similar to end stages of Alzheimer's, of like
It really
your
sounds like
body
it, yeah.
just kind of starts to shut down.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues too, like with, and I know this is like common with Alzheimer's too, is of just like hygiene and being able to, feed, bathe, clothe yourself. And, sometimes some of the hygiene issues, people, develop UTIs very commonly.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, which can be like a really scary situation really fast. And when you have someone who develops a UTI that can't communicate, it's very hard to know that they need, medication and stuff. And so,
Oh,
yeah, it's
yeah.
very similar, I feel, to the same end stages, but the progression, it looks so different with every person. Like we talk about it like they're like long, like wide stairs. Like sometimes you're in a stage for a really long time and then you go
Yep.
down and then you're in that stage for a long time and then down. Um, but then sometimes things happen and like I felt like the pandemic, like once my mom was isolated, I just felt like I saw a big change at that point.
We all
So,
did. We all did. Yeah,
yeah.
we all did. It was really the demise of so many people. And yeah, I watched my mom over Zoom just slip away
Mm,
because I couldn't see her, and it was like, it was awful. It was just awful. But I
Yeah.
think what they say about Alzheimer's patients. If you've met one, you've met one, and
yeah,
that's really
exactly.
what it is, right? And yes,
Yep.
there are similarities, but when I hear you talk, I wonder, and this is something that we're addressing in our documentary, No Country for Old People, because there is a lot of stigma and ableism for people with dementia, of any kind of dementia.
Hmm.
And then when you couple it with being older, your mom was young, God bless her heart, because she was too young for sure. But there's a lot of stigma with those two biases right there. But and I maintain this, and I know this. My mom had Alzheimer's for 16 years, and so I watched her progression, and I know her. And even as she was losing her ability to articulate with words, she was there.
Hmm.
And you
Yep.
as a mother would know that when you communicating with a child who doesn't have their language yet, they're there. You're
Yep.
communicating on a different level, right? So did you find that with your mom as well? And yes, you're right. There are these like staircases
Yeah.
of development, but there's also those moments of lucidity where even if they don't have their language, you're there with them and you are communicating. Because I could get my mom to laugh, I could get
Oh,
her to
yeah.
cry, I could get her to sing with me, even though the words weren't coming out. But she was there, and the love was there, and her enjoyment of her family was there. So did you also feel that with your mom?
1000%. Yes. And I feel like we like to talk about that a lot because I think sometimes it's very intimidating, being around someone living with dementia. You don't know how to act and you don't want to do or say the wrong thing, or you don't know if they're understanding, but like they're still there. They're still a person. That was still my mom. And so, oh my gosh, we would blast 80s music. One of my routines was I somehow negotiated with my job to work from home on Thursdays. Now working from home is like, everybody works from
Yeah.
home, but that was a big deal um, pre-pandemic. And I said, I want to spend Thursdays at home with my mom and I want to make her
Aw,
lunch and I want to,
you're so sweet.
and our little thing every Thursday was we would drive through the Starbucks drive through and we would blast 80s music and I would make like horrible jokes. Like her humor got pretty like simple, but like still like she would cackle. And I put on her 80s music that was like from her heyday of college. And yeah, we laughed and I could tell even to the very end, um, I mean, I don't know if she in her mind could say, that's Maria, that's my oldest daughter, but like she knew me, like
Oh God, yeah.
Hmm.
she knew I was there, and you could just see from her eyes, and the other thing that was so beautiful, make me cry, but she was so attached to my dad. I mean, like she couldn't communicate, but like her eyes were always on him. She always wanted to be with him. You could tell she was more at ease when she was with him.
Hmm.
And he, oh my God, he took her here, there, and everywhere. He did not say we're going to be confined to a room, to a bed. We took my mom to Ireland. He would drive her up to the beach in Maine. We took her out to Nebraska to see her sister. And let
I
me tell
love
you,
it.
these things were not easy at all. When you're
I
traveling with
know,
someone
I
who
know.
cannot follow commands, it's very stressful.
Hmm.
And she had some odd behaviors, and people are looking at her like she doesn't look sick. Like she's 50. Why is she doing that?
Right.
But like, and now we're like, oh, we gave her such a beautiful time those
You
last few
did.
years. Yeah,
You
Yeah.
we
did. You
tried our
did.
best. Yeah.
You did. You did the best you could. That's how I feel. Even on my mom's last 6 months, I went there every single day because it was not a good situation. And I did my best dog and pony Susie show I could for her every
Yep.
time. Like full on concert of my mom's older than your
Oh
mom,
yeah.
so I was doing Neil Diamond, and I was blasting the Neil Diamond and blasting the Tony Bennett, and
Oh,
I
I
by the
love
end I
that.
knew every word by heart because I would sing it because my mom was a singer, so I'd just be singing along. All the nurses would come by and go, "Oh, the concert's on! Everybody, come on!"
Oh my God. That's the
But
best.
I
You have to
try.
take on the conversation, You have to be
You
talking
I
back
was
and forth
exhausted.
and
I would be
yeah.
exhausted. Exactly. I really mean it. It was a show. I mean, I'd walk in and go, "Good
I
morning,
love
mommy.
it.
What's going on?"
Oh,
And like, and
oh.
tell her the whole story. I would tell her the story of her life all the time, and and she
I love
loved it.
that.
I'd tell her, "Yeah, all the men loved you," and she'd go, like, because you just make her feel good about herself all the time.
You as the caregiver, this is I just wanted to talk about something because Susie discovered, and she could tell you this better than I can, but she discovered at the beginning she thought she was going to solve this, she was going to, fix it, we're going to defeat this together, blah blah blah. And the frustration came when Susie kept trying to draw her back into our world.
Hmm.
And she found that the big shift was when she leaned into her world. Did
That's
that did
beautiful.
that process happen with you also?
I would say at the very, very, very end. Um, I have so much knowledge about this disease now because of what I've been doing with Remember Me for 3 years. I did not have that awareness and knowledge and like maturity at that time.
Yeah.
I got very frustrated. I, yeah, my mom always like, me and my mom were both like rule followers. So, like, I'll give you an example. Like, so my mom raised us going to church every Sunday, and my dad made it very important for her to continue to go to church. And he serves an altar. He's a deacon in our Greek church. And so he would need someone to sit with my mom. And in the Greek church, I don't know if you've ever been, but you're not supposed to talk. You're not supposed to move. It's not a chatty place. It's a very keep to yourself. And I would take my mom to church and she would want to hug all the people in all the pews. She want to go up instead of kissing because she lost like the ability to like purse her lips. She would touch people's
Pucker? Yeah.
faces. Yeah. And she would like go up to people like, and it literally gave me so much anxiety. And I'd be like, Mom, you need to be quiet, you need to sit, you need to do all these. And like it took me so long to let go of that and just be like, she's living with dementia. Like I wish I could say like I did have an aha moment, but a lot of those like came later. So after my mom passed, the priest at our church like went up and spoke about her once everybody kind of like started going back to church again, because she died during like the height of the pandemic. And the priest talked about how many people loved that my mom would go up and touch their faces. And a lot of people thought like they were the only one. Like they would be like, she really liked me. Like I was special. She always came to my pew. And here I was like so anxious. Like my mom always taught me like you behave in church, and like she was showing people so much love that they appreciated. So, you know, I wish I had leaned into it more. I wish I had just accepted this is my mom. This is how she's expressing herself now. And other people were able to see that. Like the priest was like, she showed everyone love by touching their face. And like literally when she would do that, I'd be like, stop, Mom.
Right.
Like I was so embarrassed.
Your embarrassment. Your
Yeah.
embarrassment.
I
Yeah.
was so embarrassed. I was so anxious. And they were loving it.
Right?
So,
That's exactly how I learned it
wish.
too. But you're not alone, because I had the same. I just had my mom longer. So that's the difference. I had her longer, so
Yeah.
my epiphany happened later. I had more time to have my aha moment, because honestly, when I moved my mom in with me, and I was, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm living in this live-work loft situation here in Los Angeles, where it's almost like living in a studio, and you have like valet parking, and people have got their garages really aren't their garages. They're often their offices, and my mom is very, very social anyway. And now she has no filters at all. And
Right.
she's off and running every day and loving on everybody. And aren't you great? And you're good looking. And hey, honey, da 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 da. And I'm literally dying. Like I'm dying. I'm like, what did I do? People are going to hate me. They got work to do. When I finally had to move my mom into assisted living, and I mean everybody said, we miss your mom so much. We miss her. We loved her so much. She was such a joy to everybody. And so I think that, we know our loved ones as we picture them, and we have them in a box, and that, so I got to learn so much from my mom, like I did actually from my daughters, like you will from your children, is that I remember my oldest daughter being that way with other people, so open and so, hi, what's your name? And touching them and loving on them. And I think, Joey, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And then you realize, no, why shouldn't you do that? Not enough people get love. And so
So true.
giving people love is so beautiful.
And authentic love too, because that is totally authentic.
Yes.
I think it's really important for all the caregivers out there to hear this and take this in, because so much of you, first of all, you have so much stress anyway as a caregiver.
Yeah.
And to have this added on where it's this constant, oh my God, worrying, embarrassed, all that stuff. Let it go.
And also give people the benefit of the doubt, because and I put this in the movie too, there was, as I said, a valet parker, and my mom used to, she no longer drove. We had to take her license away. She loved her Cadillac. She would go up to the valet and go every day and go, yeah, I'm can I get my car? It's a brown Cadillac. And at first they'd go, you didn't valet a car? The hell I didn't. What'd you do with my car? I'm calling the police. Apparently by day 3, they were like, they already knew it. And I didn't tell them. And they said, oh, one of them said to her, oh, well, your car's getting detailed, remember? You don't want to rush them. Cost a lot.
I love them.
Right? I put that in the movie
And
because
diffused it completely.
And my
Yeah.
mom would go, you're gorgeous. I knew I loved you. And that's what happened, right? And so what we have to do as caregivers is trust our loved ones, trust other people to have enough empathy and to have enough vision to be there, to be able to deal with it, to confront it. And if they can't, that's their problem.
Yeah.
It's not our job to
Feel
protect other
firmer
people.
in that now.
Right?
Like,
Well, you were so young.
Yeah.
You were so young. I totally get it. And you were the oldest of the family, so you had a lot on you. I I think.
And you should feel no guilt.
No, absolutely
no guilt.
zero.
Zero.
No, I mean zero.
I tell other people that, but yeah, you're hard on yourself. I wish I had done this. I wish I had understood this. Like,
absolutely not. I had 16 years to learn, so trust me, it took a while. And so I don't. I'm just saying, like, it's such a good thing that you're paying it forward by telling people your experience, because every age it's different. And my daughters, who were 16 and 20, so they learned through me, right? My best friend Don learned through me. None of us knew, and we didn't know anything about it. And I became a pro walking into the facilities with other people with memory problems. At one point, at first I was like, get me out of here. Like, after a while, I was like, hello, Jack. Hello, Janet. Hi. And I'm loving on everybody, because now I don't see their disease. I see the people.
Yes.
And that's what we have to look for, the people.
Yes.
So tell us about Remember Me podcast. I know you said a little bit while you started, but tell us about it, your community that you've built that you should be so proud of. And then, let's talk about your awareness week that you're doing coming up soon.
Yes. Thank you. Well, it's a perfect segue, what you were just talking about, because we started Remember Me because we wanted to remember our parents for who they were before the disease. We wanted to keep that like in our hearts. And when we started the podcast, both our parents were still alive. So just to back up, my co-host, Rachel Martinez, she's actually in LA, and we connected on Instagram in the middle of the pandemic. She was caring for her dad, and I was caring for my mom. And not a lot of people on Instagram were really talking about FTD, but we had connected through hashtags. Very millennial thing to do.
Millennial. So
millennial. We call it our like millennial love story. Like, we connected.
I love
online. And yeah, I studied communications in college. I always had a passion for creating, editing, radio, film. And I told my husband in, April, when that period of time during the pandemic where we were still wiping off our groceries. But I don't know if you guys did that, but it was like,
are you
that
kidding
time,
me?
the crazy
Are you kidding
time.
me? 2 hours. 2 hours. 2 hours.
It took us the first time we did it 2 hours of wiping.
Yeah, it was a wild time. We weren't leaving our homes. And I had a 2.5-year-old running around. At this point, I wasn't living with my mom anymore. We had gotten our own space. And I was like, I need a project. I need to tell people what I've been going through. I need people to understand what this disease is all about. And when Rachel and I connected, I was like, do you want to do this project with me? Even though I did not know her. And she was like, yeah, let's get on a Zoom. And we got on Zoom, and she was telling me about some of the things her dad does. And I was telling her about my mom. And we both just had this ease of like, I don't have to explain this. I don't have to be ashamed of what I'm saying, because the other one gets it, and she had her 2 sons running in the background, and my 2-year-old son is like crawling on my back. And we just like realized we were literally living like parallel lives. Me in Boston, her in LA, like caregiving for our parents living with FTD. So we started the podcast. I was like, I think I can figure this out. I did some radio before, and we put it out there, not really knowing. We didn't have any direction in the beginning. We're just kind of like, we want to share our stories. And then we started getting all these people being like, I want to share my story on your podcast. I want to share my story. And then experts being like, I really like what you're doing. Can I talk about my research on your podcast? And like, it just started growing and growing. And then Rachel's father passed in November of 2020. And my mom passed in December 2020. And we kind of had this moment of like, wow, do we keep going? Like, it's done now, but it's not done when it's done, like, and we were like, you know what, we want to honor them, and we have some traction here, and we're helping people, and it's healing. And people were very connected when we came back. We took a little tiny break, like maybe a few weeks after both our parents passed. And we came back and we talked about like our grief. People started to get really connected to our stories and just our friendship of supporting each other through our grief. And I don't know, we thought it was very crazy that our parents passed like literally 1 month almost to the day. And so we had each other to like, I don't know, get through it. I know you don't get over it, but work through it. And then this just built and built and built. And now we're going into season 8. And we're doing a ton of advocacy work. The end of September is World FTD Awareness Week. And we have this plan to hit the streets in New York, Philly, and DC. And we're literally going to be going up to people, handing them the card of our podcast and saying, have you ever heard of FTD? Can I tell you about, my mom? Or, have you ever been affected by dementia? This is a podcast that, might help you. And so we're really like just getting out there, seeing, like talking to people and trying to connect. And then we also have some meetups scheduled with in each city where members of our community, our listeners, can come and we can meet. And so that's a very short version of like the work that we've been doing over 3 years. But yeah, it's been an incredible project turned business, turned, I don't know, life's mission. And yeah, it's
You're
been
in
really
your purpose.
amazing.
You found your
Yes.
purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely.
How lovely.
So
That's lovely. Isn't that lovely? That's a gift your mom gave you.
she totally
And
did.
she gave you that gift.
Yeah, that's one of those. That's the silver
Yeah.
linings that we always talk about. How do you find that silver lining? How do you take the good out of all that bad?
Right.
You have to.
You have
Yeah.
to.
Otherwise, you can't survive.
So your love for your mom and her love for you, and you gave you this information and because you're such a big old heart, I can feel your heart. So you're able to frame it in such a nice way, in a way that's it's palpable and it will resonate
And human.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so people will accept it and take it from you, and that's a gift. That's a gift. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Data just goes by us. You give information, sometimes data and information, but
Yeah.
it's got to have the base of the heart, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so successful and why people are taking to it.
Thank you.
You talked about grief, and you also talk about normalizing grief. What is that, and how do we do that?
That's a great question. I think just talking about what you're going through and telling other people that like grief doesn't need to be like, someone died or I'm grieving. I think that's what we all were taught. That's something we know, right? Someone dies and you grieve. But no, you can grieve the loss of the relationship you had with your loved one because they changed. You can grieve that they've lost their ability to walk or to play the piano. There's so many things that, there's a different picture of grief than what I think we were taught. And I think a lot of times we're taught, just don't talk about those things. I know definitely in my culture that was a big thing. Like, you gotta be strong, don't talk about it. But I really feel like for us, like normalizing grief is about just talking about it and realizing like you form the deepest connections when you talk about your grief. And whatever it is, you don't have to have lost a parent or loved one to dementia. Just grief and getting into it and the vulnerability that comes with sharing, that's how you really connect with people. It's not, oh, you like that band? I like that band too. Okay, yeah, that's nice. But when you really get into it, it's helpful, it's healing. It just, overall, like we just wanted people to understand they're not alone. These feelings are normal. They're awful, but they're normal. And, you know, I know the whole dementia community understands like anticipatory grief is a thing, ambiguous loss
Yep.
is a thing. Like,
Yep.
um, you know, people don't understand, maybe on the journey don't understand that. So how can we just like keep having conversation about it? I think is kind of how we try and normalize it. And
Mm-hmm.
um, we talk about talking to our kids about grief. You know, we learn so much from little people. Now they
Right?
process and just, yeah,
It's so true.
and I think
We
we
learn
want to
from both
like,
ends, yeah. From
we
our elders
do.
and from our children.
And I think kids are just, I don't know, they also have like no filter sometimes,
That's
and
right.
but they also just see the world in such a beautiful way, and like seeing our kids go through their grief journeys and letting them know it's okay to talk about. We post on Instagram like some of the things our kids say because they're really young, and like they're all boys, and they'll say things like, "Is your mom still dead?" And we're like, "Okay, that's a lot for us to unpack there." But yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to change the conversation too with our kids, because I know like the way I was raised is like you just don't talk about it, but I think that can create more anxiety in kids
Oh,
because they know
yeah,
something's wrong. They know
of
something, they can
course.
feel it. And so to tell our kids, you know, it's okay to have these feelings. Let's talk about it. You know, how did that make you feel? Or also, like, how do we channel our grief in a beautiful way? Like, how do we remember? I know Rachel does with her boys on her dad's birthday. They call him Apu. They make Apu sundaes, his favorite, you know, ice cream sundae that has peanut butter in it. And that's how they think about him and talk about him and remember him. So it doesn't have to be all sad either. We can
Right.
carry
It's a
the traditions from
celebration.
them.
My granddaughter, who's 3 now, but she was 2 when she finally got to snuggle with my mom. She'd only seen her on Zoom. And
Oh,
and my mom wasn't really speaking at that point. She was, she was in bed, and Eden is her name, and Eden, I have video of it. We were just all blown away. Like it was like she had her relationship with my mom, and she wasn't really fully verbal yet either. But the two of them had their own conversation. She got into bed on her own, laying next to my mom, patting her, looking at her, kissing her. My mom was kissing her. They knew each other, and there was a whole lot of stuff going on. And to this day, they call her
Without a
Nanny.
single word.
Yeah, and to this day, my little granddaughter will say, she calls me Gaga, and she says, Gaga,
oh,
Nanny Normie. Nanny Normie's here, and I say, oh, is she? And she says, oh,
oh
yeah.
my
And I
gosh.
say,
I love
what does she
that.
say? And she goes, oh, she says she loves me. And I go, what else does she do? She gives me kisses and she sings. Well, she doesn't know my mom sings. So I'm just saying that I'm not just being a little ooey here, but it's interesting, right?
I'm into all of that. I love it.
Okay. No,
And she does it. And she does this
all
all
the
the time.
time.
She just says it out of
nowhere.
nowhere.
And my grandma,
all the
who
time.
looked like Hetty Lamar, I have a picture of her, who she's fascinated with. And her name was Rose, and she calls her Nanny Rosie. She, of course, never met her. And
she never met her.
All
Yeah.
the time she goes, Nanny Rosie loves you. And Nanny Rosie says hi. She talks to both my mom and my grandma all the time. And I'm not that way. I don't talk about, this just all on her own, just out of nowhere. So just throwing that out there to listeners.
And everywhere.
you.
We were at the zoo with her once, and all of a sudden she says, "Oh, Nanny Normie is here." She says hi.
Yeah.
Oh my
I mean, we're just
gosh.
walking around the zoo. So it wasn't related to her seeing a picture of her or anything.
No,
It was-
so I mean,
it's amazing.
It's beautiful what we, and I just want, for me, my mission now is just to give people their dignity and their humanity throughout their journey. Whatever is going on with them, with their health, they are entitled to their dignity and their choices and their humanity, because they are there. And you only have to look at a 2-year-old who recognizes it right away and go, okay, because we are all, between childhood and our elder years, we are bombarded with, we have so many facades up, and we're bombarded with social construct, and so we often can't see what's right in front of our faces. So,
So
I,
true.
I, Is there anything we missed talking? We could talk to you for hours. You're
Oh my gosh,
delightful.
I know. Thank you. No, I mean, I just love talking about my mom, so thank you for giving me the space to do that. I feel like one of the beautiful things about having Remember Me is that so many more people have a connection to my mom now, even though she's gone. And so I encourage people, keep talking about your people. Don't be afraid, like, oh, this is too dark. I don't want to talk about, my dementia journey. Like, that's in the past now. No, still talk about them because, like, to your point, with your granddaughter, it's like if you hadn't talked to her or given her the opportunity to meet your mom and snuggle with her, like, would she be talking about these things? I don't know. Maybe she's has some telepathy stuff going on or whatever. But, I mean, let's just keep talking about them, and it's healing and
Absolutely.
it's keeps them their legacy going. So,
Alive. Yeah. They're
yeah.
like my mom is with me all the
Yeah.
time and I hear you and I'm grateful to give you a platform to talk about your mom because I also love talking about my mom and I'm also grateful that my so many people know my mother through the movie that we made and through our podcast and through the documentary that I'm doing and more people know my mom probably than they know me and they love her and that makes me so happy. Like it makes me
I
so
love that.
happy. I'll leave you with this one thing which I love about my mom that was when I told her I was doing a movie with her about her and I showed her the trailer and I said, Mom, do you remember Valerie Harper from Rhoda and Mary Tyler Moore? She goes, of course. And I go, well, I'm doing a movie about you and she's playing you. And she goes, what?
Oh
Why?
my
And I
God.
go, because you're terrific. And she goes, that's true.
I love her. That's amazing.
And so
I
I
love
was
it.
like, I just loved it because I got to make her feel good about herself. So it was so lovely. So thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for representing the millennials. And
I try.
I know.
It's
It's
important. It's
important. No, it's
important.
so you're doing us good service to your gen because it's important because we get wrapped up in our day to days that aren't
Yeah.
everything's important, right? But I mean we need to take into account that we forget, especially and rightly so in your 30s and 20s and 30s and 40s that life is finite and we need to be more zen and live in the moment and recognize that it's fleeting and so we need to take a moment and you're letting people take a moment in a lovely way, so thank you so much and thanks
Thank
to
you.
Rachel, thank you for doing
Thanks,
this. We
Rach.
didn't get to meet you.
And we'll put up all your information will be in our show notes and
And liner
we
notes
will
because we're going to do an
talk
album,
about everything
yeah.
good. And liner notes, yeah. Let's do an album.
I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Maria she'll be there on the
Showing my
streets.
age. Showing my age.
She's going to be on the streets. And where are you going to be in Philly? And let's see, where are you going to
New
be
York
on your
and
tour?
DC. Yeah.
And
New York.
DC with CDs to sign and
I love it.
Vinyl,
vinyl,
baby.
baby.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's
Love
right.
vinyl.
Well, I love you, and which is appropriate because why, Dawn?
Well, that is because love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. So we thank everyone for watching today and listening, and like us and all those good things, and like Maria and her wonderful podcast.
not?
And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Take care.